Montana Territory, autumn of 1872. The storm rolled in like a cavalry charge, black clouds galloping over the mountains and swallowing the horizon. Wind howled across the open plains, rattling the stagecoach like bones in a drum. Inside, Clara Whitmore clutched the letter to her chest, the edges frayed, the ink faded, but its promise still bright in her heart. She hadn't eaten since dawn. Dust caked her skirts. Her fingers were raw from clutching the seat, but she refused to cry. She'd shed all the tears she could back in Boston, standing in the ruins of the only home she'd ever known, fire licking the edges of her childhood. She was done with mourning. Now she traveled west for something new. Something bold. A name on a letter, a man who spoke in sparse but kind words, and a hope she barely dared to speak aloud: love. The coach jolted, the left wheel catching a rut. Clara braced herself as the horses shrieked and the coachman cursed. Thunder cracked overhead. Then silence. Too much silence. When she leaned out, the coachman was gone. He'd disappeared 2 days ago after a brief stop at a lonely trading post, his rifle and saddlebag missing. The only other passenger, a frail boy with a persistent cough, had died before they made it out of Kansas. Clara had buried him with her own hands beneath a cottonwood. Since then, she had traveled alone, relying on the terrified horses to carry her to Cold Creek, to Jonas Hale, and to whatever life he'd built. A wheel snapped. The coach tumbled, throwing Clara hard into the mud. Pain seared down her shoulder. She rose slowly, dress soaked, vision blurred. The horses thrashed, then went still. The silence pressed in again, thick and absolute. Then came the howls. Wolves. Close. Clara scrambled for the small revolver in her satchel. Her hands trembled, but she loaded it, thumbed back the hammer, and stood her ground beside the broken coach. No one was coming. Not out here. The storm would cover any scream, any shot. And yet, by dawn, she was still alive. She walked the final mile to Cold Creek with her boots soaked and her pride scraped raw, carrying everything she owned in a tattered carpetbag. The town emerged from the morning mist like a half-formed memory, rows of cabins, a saloon still lit from the night before, and a church steeple leaning slightly as if in prayer. No one welcomed her. She passed a group of men who stared too long. A woman spat in the dirt at her feet. And then, near the edge of town, she saw him. Jonas Hale stood by a black gelding, his wide-brimmed hat pulled low. He wore no smile, no rose in his hand. Just a rifle slung across his back and the kind of silence that spoke louder than words. He was older than she'd imagined, 30, perhaps 35, but there was something noble in his posture, something haunted in his eyes. "You're Clara?" he asked, voice rough as gravel but soft in tone. "I am." "You're late." The coach broke. The driver disappeared. Jonas nodded once. "We should go." No embrace. No warm welcome. Just an outstretched hand to lift her onto the saddle behind him. She hesitated, then took it. His hand was calloused and steady, the hand of a man who worked the land and buried his doubts deep. They rode in silence for nearly an hour, the land unfolding in golden waves around them, burnt fields, clusters of pine, distant mountains wrapped in fog. The homestead appeared as a blur of wood and smoke, nestled against a ridge like a secret. A cabin. A barn. A creek running slow and shallow nearby. He dismounted first and helped her down. His touch lingered a moment too long, not out of romance, but calculation. "This is your home now," he said. "If you still want it." "I crossed a continent," she replied. "I won't turn back now." Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar and ash. It was clean, if sparse. One table, 2 chairs. A stone hearth with a small fire. A cot near the window, already made up for her. A closed door in the back, unlabeled, locked. "You'll sleep there," he said. "Until we're married." She looked at him, surprised. "I thought, the arrangement was." He held up a hand. "We'll speak vows come Sunday. I meant what I wrote. But not before." Clara nodded. Strange as he was, he hadn't lied. He hadn't touched her without permission. That counted for something out here. The days that followed blurred together, splitting wood, feeding chickens, learning to move in boots too large and weather too cruel. Jonas was gone most mornings before dawn, returning only to eat and read in silence. She spoke to him in soft attempts, a memory from Boston, a question about his land, but he offered little in return. Only once did he laugh, when she tried to milk a goat and ended up soaked to the waist. "You're persistent," he said, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "I was raised to be polite," she replied. "And very stubborn." The silence between them began to shift, not warm, but less cold. She saw him watching her sometimes, quietly, like a man trying to remember something long forgotten. He showed her how to shoot, how to trap rabbits, how to keep a fire from dying during a night storm. She showed him how to make bread with cornmeal, how to set a table with care, how to speak kindly even when exhausted. And yet, something remained off. He locked that back room each night. Once, when she asked what was inside, he answered too quickly, tools. Old supplies. Sometimes, she'd catch him staring off toward the creek, lips pressed tight, knuckles white around a cup of coffee. When she tried to follow his gaze, there was only mist or the sway of tall grass. One night, after a late dinner, she found him outside, sitting alone on the porch. "Do you regret writing me?" she asked. He didn't look at her. "No. But this land, it demands more than most are willing to give. I didn't come here to run." "I know." They sat together in silence, the stars sharp and cold above them. Somewhere in the woods, a fox cried. Then came the sound, a faint cry. A child's wail. Clara stood, startled. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" Jonas asked, too quickly. "A cry. Out there, near the trees." "It's just the wind," he said, rising. "It plays tricks. Best to ignore it." But Clara didn't believe him. And when he went inside, locking the door behind them, she stayed by the window long after the lantern burned low. The next morning, while gathering kindling near the creek, she saw something half buried in the mud. A child's shoe. Tiny. Leather laces torn. Still wet. She looked back toward the cabin. The mist curled around the eaves like fingers. And somewhere deep in her chest, the warmth that had begun to form, turned to ice. The child's shoe weighed almost nothing, yet Clara felt its presence like a stone in her chest. She turned it over in her hand, mud caked around the sole, the stitching loose and frayed. There was no reason for such a thing to be out here. Not unless Jonas was hiding something, or someone. That night, Clara didn't sleep. She listened instead. To every creak in the wood. Every scrape of the wind. Twice, she heard footsteps outside the window, too light to be Jonas, too measured to be an animal. She rose with the dawn, weary but determined, and tucked the shoe beneath a floorboard in the kitchen. Jonas said nothing unusual at breakfast, but his eyes lingered on her too long. Clara played the part of a dutiful bride-to-be, setting out his plate, folding linens, asking about the fences. But her thoughts ran wild. Was it grief that haunted him? Or guilt? That afternoon, while Jonas rode into town for supplies, Clara pried open the door he always kept locked. The hinges groaned. Inside, dust floated like ghosts in the dim light. The room was small, suffocating. No tools. No supplies. Just an old rocking chair, a moth-eaten quilt, and, beneath the window, a worn wooden toy horse, its paint faded to gray. A child's room, abandoned but not forgotten. The chair rocked faintly, as though someone had just risen. She stepped backward, heart thudding in her ears. Behind the door, something scratched. A whisper of movement. She opened it fast. Nothing. The feeling stayed with her for the rest of the day, clinging like smoke. She wanted to ask him, demand the truth, but Jonas returned late, worn and silent, and went straight to the barn. Instead, Clara walked to the edge of the property, where the creek ran narrow and fast. There, nestled beneath a half-fallen pine, she found more signs. A pile of stones arranged like a dollhouse hearth. Feathers braided into twine. And nearby, small footprints leading deeper into the woods. A shadow passed behind her. She spun around, heart leaping. A man stood just beyond the tree lean. Tall, wrapped in buckskin, silent as snowfall. His eyes, dark, unreadable, met hers across the distance. He held no weapon, made no sound. Then, as quietly as he'd come, he disappeared into the trees. Clara backed away, pulse pounding. When she told Jonas that night, he said only, "Stay away from the forest. It doesn't forgive trespassers." She wanted to scream at him. To shake the truth loose. But something about the way he gripped his mug, knuckles white and shaking, told her that whatever haunted him, it was winning. The next day brought snow, early and brutal. A storm barreled down from the mountains, trapping them indoors. Cold crept through the cabin walls, through her boots, through her bones. Food grew scarce. Clara rationed flour, cut thin slices of salt pork, boiled what root vegetables she could find beneath the frost. Jonas paced. At night, he took to sitting by the fire, staring into the flames as if expecting something, or someone, to crawl out. Clara curled under quilts and tried to block out the sound, faint scratching at the window. The moan of wind shaped too much like words. On the third night, she saw her. A small figure standing by the edge of the woods, just beyond the fence line. Pale dress. Bare feet. A tangle of dark hair. The snow swirled around her but did not seem to touch her. She didn't move. Didn't speak. Clara grabbed her coat and rushed outside, calling out, stumbling through the drifts. But by the time she reached the tree line, the girl was gone. Only the footprints remained, tiny, delicate, vanishing into the trees. When Jonas found her shivering near the creek, he said nothing. He carried her inside, wrapped her in blankets, and sat beside her until her teeth stopped chattering. "She's not real," he muttered. "You're seeing what I see." Clara turned to him. "Who is she?" He stared at the fire, as if weighing each word. "Her name was Amelia. She was mine." "Was?" "She died. Years ago. I buried her up on the ridge. But I saw her, Jonas, she's alive. I followed her tracks." "No," he said fiercely, standing. "Don't follow ghosts. Don't dig up the dead." He stormed out, slamming the door. She heard him ride off, hooves pounding over the frozen ground. That evening, Clara heard movement outside again. But this time, she wasn't alone. The man from the forest appeared near the barn, stepping from the darkness like it was a cloak. He approached slowly, cautious but not afraid. His face was solemn, carved by wind and war. In his hands, he held a bundle, freshly skinned rabbit meat. Clara stood frozen on the porch. He laid the offering at the base of the steps, then turned away without a word. "Wait," she called. He paused, looking back. "Why are you helping me?" His gaze flicked toward the woods, then to the cabin, and finally to her. He pointed to his own chest, then to hers, then made a small motion, fingers clasped, pulled tight. Clara understood. Tied together. Bound by the same storm. From that day forward, he returned every few days, always silent, always watchful. She began to leave him small tokens in return, dried apples, folded cloth, her grandmother's thimble. No words passed between them. Only trust, built in fragments. Jonas grew colder. He began locking himself in the cellar. Clara heard him weeping once, quiet, gasping sobs muffled by earth and shame. On a hunch, she searched the barn again. There, behind a hay bale, she found a collection of things, a child's blanket, a cracked teacup, and beneath them, a stack of letters. They were addressed to a woman named Annabelle. Clara read them by lantern light. Each one was a plea, penned in a hand that trembled more with each page. "I cannot do this without you. Amelia cries for you. I fear I am breaking. The men from the regiment, Coulter's boys, they're asking questions. They think I betrayed them. I have to hide. I told the girl you died in the river. It was Kinder. Was it?" Each letter was darker than the last, ink smudged with rain or tears. The final one had no date. Only a line, "She's safer without me." I locked the door. I can't hear her scream anymore. Clara folded the letters with shaking hands. She had to know the truth. Armed with only a shawl and her revolver, she followed the child's tracks again at first light. This time, she didn't stop at the creek. She pushed deeper into the forest, ignoring the cold, the branches clawing at her skin. And then, there it was. A cabin. Half buried in snow, swallowed by trees, hidden so carefully it might never have been found. Smoke curled from the chimney. A child's laughter echoed faintly from within. Clara crept closer. Through the frost-covered window, she saw her, Amelia, alive, cheeks flushed, playing with carved wooden dolls. A bowl of porridge on the table. A blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. She wasn't alone. A woman stirred the fire. Not Annabelle. Too young. Perhaps a caretaker. Hired? Threatened? Loyal? Clara didn't knock. Not yet. She turned and ran back to the homestead, breathless and shaken. Jonas was waiting on the porch, gun in hand. "You shouldn't have gone there," he said. His voice was flat. Empty. "You lied to me." "I had to," he whispered. "They were after me. After her. You don't know what they'll do if they find her." "Who?" Clara demanded. "Who are you hiding her from?" Jonas looked toward the forest. "Men I once rode with. After the war. They think I ran with the money. That I left them to die. They want revenge. They'll use her to hurt me." "So you buried her alive? Let her grow up in a cage." "She was safe." "No," Clara said. "She was forgotten." Behind them, the wind carried a new sound, hooves. Not one horse. Several. Dust kicked up on the horizon. Clara's blood ran cold. "They found you," she whispered. Jonas chambered a round into his rifle. "They found us." The wind whipped across the clearing, biting and sharp. Clara's fingers trembled around the cold steel of her revolver as she watched the riders approach, 4 of them, silhouettes painted in dusklight, kicking up dirt and dread in equal measure. Jonas stood beside her, his rifle raised, but his hands shook, not from cold, but fear. The kind born of old guilt and blood debts long unpaid. "They'll want me," he said, voice low and hoarse. "Not you. Not Amelia." Clara didn't respond. Her mind raced, not with fear, but clarity. There was no safe path now, no peaceful end. Only the truth and the storm that followed. The horses slowed at the fence line. One rider dismounted, tall and broad, his beard streaked with gray and eyes hard as flint. He stepped forward, casual, like death in no hurry. "Evenin', Jonas," he drawled. "Been a long trail." Jonas said nothing. "We had a deal, remember?" the man continued, brushing snow from his duster. "Split the bounty. Split the gold. And you just vanished. With her. With the money. With our damn lives." "There was no gold," Jonas said. "Only lies." "Then why run?" Clara could feel it now, how deep the betrayal ran. Jonas hadn't stolen riches. He'd stolen safety. Betrayed his comrades to protect something far more fragile. His daughter. His broken chance at a different life. "She's just a child," Clara said, stepping forward. "She doesn't belong in this." The man's eyes flicked to her. "You must be the bride." "Poor thing." One of the other men laughed behind him, a sharp, ugly sound. The stranger continued, "Thing is, lady, this ain't about her. It's about justice. Ain't that right, boys?" They murmured assent. Fingers twitched near holsters. The smell of blood hung already in the wind. Jonas took a step forward. "If it's me you want, I'll ride out. Alone." "Too late for that," the leader said. "We found the girl's cabin. The woman, too. You built yourself a life out here on our graves. That's gotta cost something." Before Jonas could answer, a low whistle cut through the clearing. The forest moved. The stranger stepped from the shadows, buckskin-clad, silent, deadly. He raised his bow with fluid grace and loosed an arrow faster than breath. The first rider fell without a sound, his chest pierced clean. Gunfire erupted. Jonas dragged Clara down behind the well wall as bullets shredded the air. The stranger disappeared into the trees, reappearing only in bursts, his arrows finding marks with terrifying precision. One of the bandits screamed, then fell. Jonas returned fire, hitting the third man in the leg. He crumpled, shrieking. The last man, the leader, ducked behind a stump, reloading. Clara heard something else then. Small footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw her. Amelia. Pale, frightened, barefoot in the snow. Clara ran to her, heart pounding. "You have to get inside, now." But the girl didn't move. She was staring, past Clara, at her father. "Papa," she whispered. Jonas turned, rifle lowering. In that one moment, his face softened, like every wall cracked and crumbled. A shot rang out. Clara screamed. Jonas staggered, blood blooming across his chest. He dropped to his knees. Amelia rushed forward. Clara pulled her back, shielding her as the gunman emerged, grinning through blood-slicked teeth. "You should have stayed buried, Jonas." But before he could fire again, the stranger stepped behind him, silent as snow. One stroke of a blade across the throat. The man collapsed. Silence returned, broken only by Jonas's ragged breaths. Clara crawled to him. His hands were cold. His lips blue. I wanted to keep her safe," he rasped. "You did," Clara said, tears freezing on her cheeks. "You did the best you could." He looked at Amelia one last time. A faint smile curved his lips. And then he was gone. The forest stilled. The stranger knelt beside Clara. He said nothing, but offered her a folded cloth. She took it, pressing it to Jonas's wound though it was too late. Amelia wept quietly, clutching his sleeve. The rest of that night passed like a half-remembered dream. They buried Jonas on the ridge above the creek, beneath the lone pine. Clara said the prayers. The stranger placed a carved wooden horse at the foot of the grave. Amelia stood silent, small hands clenched. Clara wrapped her arms around the girl. "We'll make it," she whispered. "I promise." In the days that followed, the snow melted into slush. The stranger returned often, sometimes with food, sometimes with nothing at all. He taught Clara how to trap rabbits, how to read the trees, how to listen when no words were spoken. One evening, as the sun dipped low, he stood beside her by the cabin. "He was your enemy," Clara said. The stranger shrugged. "No. Not enemy. Just lost." She looked at him. "Why help us?" He tapped his chest, then pointed to hers. The same gesture as before. Tied together. She understood now. Not just by fate. But by choices. Survival. Trust. Clara took Amelia's hand. They watched the forest breathe. In time, the girl would ask questions. About her father. Her mother. The ghosts in the trees. Clara would answer them all, gently, honestly. But not tonight. Tonight, they were alive. As the final embers of the sun vanished behind the ridge, Clara turned to the camera, breaking the fourth wall, eyes steady, voice calm. Love isn't always what we expect it to be. Sometimes, it's forged in fire. Sometimes, it's born of loss. And sometimes, it's what we become in its absence that defines us. She looked down at Amelia, then back again. If you've ever found strength where you thought you had none, or trusted when it was easier to run, tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. A pause. A smile edged with sorrow, but filled with steel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this journey with someone who needs it. Out here in the wild, all we have is each other. Fade to black. Snow begins to fall. And the cabin stands, silent but strong, against the endless, whispering pines.